morning, thanks for choosing RT International. Wherever you're tuned in around the world this hour. Our top story then, it's possible that Turkey's shooting down of a Russian military jet in Syria was part of a deal maybe with the US. Vladimir Putin made that claim during his end-of-year Q&A session with journalists earlier.
I get your hint. We don't know for sure, but perhaps some of the Turks wanted to lick the Americans' you-know-what. So they shot down our plane in exchange for their American allies turning a blind eye to the Turkish invasion and occupation of territory in Iraq. It's entirely possible.
Let's catch up with Daniel Hawkins, who was listening throughout that, nigh on 3-hour Q&A session. 1,400 journalists there, weren't there, Dan? He didn't hold back in his words, did he, when it came to that subject?
Well, absolutely not. Reserved very fierce criticism for Turkey for that shooting down of the Russian jet and the subsequent death of 2 Russian servicemen. He asked the rhetorical question, why? What had Turkey gained from this hostile act? He slated the Turkish leadership for their lack of cooperation and dialogue with Moscow on this issue and accused them of running to Brussels and hiding behind NATO as opposed to resolving this matter with Moscow. Mr. Putin made it very clear that Russia would not shy away from defending its position and its interests.
We've increased our military presence in Syria. We have more combat planes there now. We didn't have any air defense systems there before. Now we have the S-400. If the Turks used to fly there before and violate Syrian airspace, then let them try and fly now.
He's certainly not one to mince his words, and his words indeed are already receiving quite a strong reaction in the press following this conference.
Now, the journalists also didn't shy away from questions about the president's personal, private life, and that's something normally keeps pretty quiet, isn't it?
That's absolutely right. He's very reserved about his private life, not normally commenting at all about speculation, but this is obviously one question he did decide to answer about his daughters, Maria and Katerina. Media has long speculated about his daughters' whereabouts, their wealth, their alleged links to business, etc. And Putin denied these allegations. He made very clear that his daughters did not live and study abroad, that they lived, studied and worked in Russia, but that they stayed well clear of politics and business and would continue to do so, valuing their private life above all else. Now, record numbers of press assembled this year, as you mentioned, Kevin, 1,400 in total. And they came up with some quite interesting ways of trying to get the president's attention to ask those questions, from holding up images of national landmarks, as did the Egyptian press, to holding up placards with various slogans. They all tried their best to get the president's attention, to get in those key questions in that marathon 3-hour session.
Thank you. Yeah, we can see them all there with their hands up trying to get those questions in. Got through a fair amount, didn't he? Daniel Hawkins, thank you for that for now. Of course, all the media wants anyone time as a soundbite, and they probably thought they got it today. Let's bring in Neil Clark now to talk about the main news, I guess, that came out, or the main soundbite, you could say. How plausible is it that there was actually a deal between the US and Turkey about that downed Russian plane? That was one of the things that Putin said. Yes. Of course, that's what made the press's ears prick up.
Absolutely, I think it's highly likely, Kevin, because I think it beggars belief to think that Turkey would have shot this plane down. If we agree with the Turkish version, the plane was only in Turkish airspace for a matter of seconds. And the idea that Turkey on its own bat, so to speak, would actually shoot down a Russian jet, that's quite unlikely. I think Turkey is a proxy, has been acting as a proxy for the US in this. And I think it's quite likely that beforehand they were given the go-ahead by the US to do this.
Well, if you follow that line of reasoning, I suppose, that would explain why there was no official, if it was an accident, why there was no official apology forthcoming from Turkey.
Absolutely, yes. So all the indications are that the US knew about this and they encouraged it, or may even have ordered it, to throw a spanner in the works of Russia's operations in Syria. And of course, the United States would prefer to do that through a proxy like Turkey than to do it themselves.
So if you follow that line of argument through, are we going to see any backpedaling by Erdogan anytime soon then when it comes to Russia?
Well, he's in a pickle, isn't he? Because he needs to, because this is going to hit the Turkish economy really hard. I mean, the sanctions are going to hit the Turkish economy next year. Turkish and Russian trade in 2014 was 30 billion. There was talk only a couple of months ago of it going up to 100 billion. And of course, all this is in sanctions on Turkey. Russian tourists won't be going to Turkey. That's going to cost the Turkish economy billions. So I think Erdogan does need to row back now. If he has done this because the Americans, if the plane was shot down at the behest of the Americans, then this is not in the best interest of Turkey, because Turkey needs to have good relations with Russia. It's in Turkey's national interests not to fall out with Russia.
Well, those sorry, I was going to say there's another, we were talking about headline grabbing, we want to try and get this one in as well. All the journalists listening to what he had to say, especially about East Ukraine. He did have something to say about that, and in fact it inspired some very, very quick headlines. But the question is, did they get the intonation, did they get the sense of what Putin was saying right? Let's listen to Putin coming straight back.
We never said there were no people there who carried out certain tasks, including in the military sphere. But that doesn't mean there are any regular Russian troops. See the difference?
Well, a lot of journalists seem to jump the gun on that. They said, well, therefore he's admitted this was the golden gun they were looking for, that, yeah, there was an official presence there. How did you read what he had to say there about East Ukraine and Russian involvement or not?
Misreporting again, isn't it, Kevin, in much of the Western media? Because remember back at the time we heard about all the claims were a Russian invasion of Ukraine, and of course soldiers were mentioned. And of course Putin isn't saying that. He's saying the military advisors were in Ukraine. The same way, of course, there's American military advisors in Ukraine too. So I think this is a bit of a non-story, really. And he's not saying that there were units of Russian soldiers coming in. That was the claim, and now his words are being twisted again as a kind of to try and make out that the line taken by much of the Western media was correct. It wasn't. There was no Russian invasion of Ukraine, and nothing that President Putin today backs that up.
Neil Clark, journalist broadcaster, thank you for your thoughts. Been live with us in RT International.
Thanks, Kevin.
President Putin's also demonstrated his trademark walk when he entered the hall for today's Q&A session. His movement has been analysed and speculated to, of course, for years. Now a group of European neurologists think they've made a discovery. Well, from the whimsical back to the big news of the day, more of it. A Turkish MP faces treason charges, as we've been reporting over the last couple of days, after implicating Ankara in chemical weapons smuggling to Islamic State in Syria. The guy's name's Erdogan. He's attracted the attention of investigators after he spoke to us about his allegations.
Chemical weapon materials were brought to Turkey and put together in ISIL camps in Syria, which was known as the Iraqi Al-Qaeda at the time. We have recordings to confirm this. The phone recordings in the indictment showed all the details of how the shipment was going to be made, from A to Z. Everything was discussed and recorded. Despite all of this evidence, the suspects were released.
The interview in which Erdogan made the allegations was aired this Monday. The day after that, the opposition MP received death threats on social media. On Wednesday, Ankara's chief prosecutor's office launched a criminal investigation against Erdogan. Merab Savi is a Turkey-based journalist with more.
Erdogan's fate hangs by the balance this morning. We called him to see if he would come join us to comment about the momentum that's picking up quickly in this treason case against him after the exclusive interview he gave to RT earlier this week. He sounded afraid on the phone, told us that there were people outside his house here in Istanbul overnight chanting death threats at him, calling him a traitor and waving Turkish flag. And that's a sentiment that we've heard from a lot of opposition party members who we asked to come speak with us, and they were afraid and said they don't want to comment about this ongoing situation. Now, local media is saying that his treason case could go to the Justice Ministry as soon as today. From there, it will go